Good morning. You're watching Businessworld Live. I'm Danny Laurel.
And I'm Jess De Los Santos. Here are the biggest stories to kickstart this trading day, Friday. FDI inflows jumped to a 23-month high in November 2021.
In another indicator that's pointing to an economy on the mend, bad loans dropped to an 11-month low in December of last year.
Alert level 1 soon, while NEDA is backing the proposal to de-escalate to the least strict quarantine classification by next month.
And the Metro Manila subway project is receiving additional funding from Japan that's worth more than 112 billion pesos. We begin our broadcast with the net inflows of foreign direct investment surging to a nearly 2-year high in November of 2021.
And economists say FDI prospects may further improve in the coming months. Data from the Bangko Sentral shows that FDI inflows nearly doubled to almost $1.1 billion in November from the same month in 2020. In the 11 months to November, FDI inflows jumped by 52% to more than $9.23 billion. That already exceeds the BSP's end 2021 goal of $8 billion. Union Bank Chief Economist Carlo Asuncion said the general reopening of the global economy is one major reason for the improved FDI figures. He expects the trend to continue in the coming months as more countries contain the Omicron surge. For RCBC Chief Economist Mike Ricafort, investor sentiment was lifted by the government's shift to an alert level system with localized lockdowns. Meanwhile, bad loans dropped to its lowest level in 11 months in December 2021. Banks' non-performing loan ratio went down to almost 4% from the 4.35% logged in November last year. However, this figure was still higher than the 3.63% recorded at the end of 2020. The end December bad loan ratio is the lowest in 11 months or since the 3.72% recorded in end January 2021. An economist over at the Asian Institute of Management attributes this drop in bad loan ratio to the pickup in credit growth due to a more sustained economic reopening. Well, Dan, on the back of those bad loans dropping, how are banks doing this Friday morning?
Surprisingly, on the back foot opening, just take a look at our financial index here. That's down by 0.6%. This is the first 6 minutes into trade. Of course, this comes as we did see already, especially our biggest banks rallying after some earnings reports. So perhaps it was time to take some profits here. So not necessarily going in the green direction, but this is opposite of what the bourse is doing. Although I have to say the bourse has been quite iffy this morning. It was first opening in the red and it's now jumped back up by 0.1%. Now recall that yesterday, you can see the 3-day chart here on Bloomberg, we already pulled back. And this according to Jonathan Ravelas of BDO, he said that was basically profit taking. We had surged above 7,500 and people thought maybe it might be time for the picking here. Plus, there's a lot of downside risks today, and not just in the Philippines, but in the rest of Asia. This as we follow what is going on over in the United States. Stocks and bonds are under pressure. Treasuries and Wall Street shares sank. That's as U.S. inflation went to a fresh 4-decade high, Jess, at 7.5% inflation over in the U.S. And of course, that is raising the bets for the Fed to act faster and raise hikes. Let's take a quick peek at our movers here. You can see Robinson's Retail, Aboitiz, and Converge leading the gains here, but there are still a lot of shaky stocks. ICTSI in particular down by 1.8%, and BDO and BPI, of course, dragging down the financial space. Let's take a look at Globe Telecom. More news on that after we had already reported their earnings there, and they were the worst performer yesterday. I'm just going to pull out the 3-day chart for you so you can see how Globe performed yesterday, and continuing that slump today. That's already down by more than 9.4% in just 3 days of trade. This, as they say, they're expecting low single digits revenue growth in 2022. They also provided just weaker guidance simply because they said that the impact of the Typhoon Odette was felt in their network operations, and they had a slow start of the year, particularly also with Omicron. But they did mention that broadband is seen to post another record year this year. And also, we do have some more earnings to break quickly. Cemex here, that's down by 1 centavo, so to speak. This is, they've said that their net income was down 26% year on year to the tune of 726 million pesos. This is on the back of, even as domestic cement volumes rose 7% last year in 2021, but still fell 2% in the fourth quarter. And this also comes as San Miguel, another one that's, of course, in the cement industry, saying that they plan to double the capacity of their 10 billion peso cement facility over in Davao to lessen reliance on imports. So again, Cemex trading at 1 peso and 7 centavos.
The Philippines' score in a democracy index improved. However, the country's classification remained as a flawed democracy. The Economist Intelligence Unit found that the COVID pandemic resulted in a, quote, unprecedented withdrawal of civil liberties in both democratic and authoritarian regimes. In fact, the global average score in its democracy index took a plunge for the second consecutive year from 5.37 points in 2020 to 5.28 in 2021. This was the worst global score since the index first came out in 2006. Meanwhile, the Philippines received a democracy score of 6.62. That's a slight improvement from 6.56 in 2020. Still, the Philippines lagged behind neighbors Malaysia, Timor-Leste, and was classified as a flawed democracy. European countries topped the full democracy classification, with Norway topping last year's global index.
Now, the World Bank says the Philippine government needs to spend better and collect more taxes to manage debts incurred during the pandemic. The World Bank senior economist Rong Shan said the government needs to start a gradual fiscal consolidation process that's in order to regain policy space and reduce debt to GDP ratio. The global lender emphasized relying on growth alone will not be enough. Recall that the Philippine government recorded an 11.73 trillion peso outstanding debt as of the end of 2021. That's growing nearly 20% year on year. This means the country's debt to GDP ratio is now over 60%.
Japan and the Philippines inked the second tranche of a loan agreement that's amounting to 253 billion yen or 112 billion pesos to fund the first phase of the Metro Manila Subway project. Finance Secretary Carlos Dominguez attended the signing ceremony together with the Japanese ambassador and JICA's representative to the Philippines. This ODA loan agreement follows Japan's first tranche funding for the project, amounting to 46 billion pesos, signed in 2018. Now, coming right up, NEDA expects a shift to Alert Level 1 to add more than 11 billion pesos to the economy per week.
More of that and other stories when Businessworld Live returns. Stay with us.
You're still watching Business World Live here on One News. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Dani Laurel. NEDA Secretary Carl Chua is backing the move to de-escalate Metro Manila and surrounding areas to Alert Level 1 by March.
This as COVID-19 infections continue to drop nationwide. Chua explained that a shift to Alert Level 1 would add over 11 billion pesos to the economy each week. Plus, it would also add about 191,000 jobs per week.
Every week that we move from one alert level to another, we incur a loss or a gain. Fortunately, we did not see the need to shift to alert level 4, which would be very bad for the economy in 2022. What we did was to move away from stringent quarantines to more targeted ones and manage the risk by focusing on the closed spaces, the crowds, and the close contacts, and using granular lockdowns.
Now, prior to NEDA, presidential advisor for entrepreneurship Joey Concepcion has already been making that push to ease to the least restrictive alert level, especially in NCR. To find out exactly how he wants to go about this, we have him on the show. Good morning, Sir Joey. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
All right, sir. What makes you think first that NCR is ready to make that shift to alert level 1? And how do you balance that with fears of another surge?
Well, you've seen it basically, last year in the last quarter. We did the early lockdown. That was Delta. We say that fourth quarter, 7.7 GDP was the result. Then come January, you had Omicron coming in, became the dominant variant. But we all knew that eventually this variant would be not as dangerous as Delta. It proved to be mild for those who have taken the vaccines. And that's why NCR has benefited the most, because the percentage of who have been vaccinated with 2 doses and now going for their booster shots has hit as high as 90%, even close to 100%. So NCR definitely has been insulated. Even in the height of Omicron, we did not see the hospitals hit capacity. It was barely maybe at 50% capacity. So we know the characteristic of this variant, and that's why the whole team is pushing for vaccination.
Well, apart from NCR, Sir Joey, what other areas would you deem ready at this stage to actually shift to alert level 1? And apart from vaccination coverage, what other parameters do you think should the government take into account?
Well, I think what's very important is those areas that are the 70 to 80% vaccinated can, to my mind, move towards alert level 1. That is important. I think the goal right now is to focus on the economy. We have a good handle with the health situation. As you can see, the prediction of Octa Research is cases are moving down and will continue to move down. And that's why the push of the private sector is to move to alert level 1 as soon as possible. And hopefully that's done this month, or at the latest, the first week of March. As Secretary Chua said, what's important is that we need to improve economic activity. The government, as you know, needs tax revenues, and tax revenues can only happen if companies do well. Private sector, MSMEs start to bounce back. And you can see that many have responded to a robust fourth quarter last year. It cannot just be the fourth quarter last year that does great. So you can see the debt to GDP has crept beyond 60%. Carl Chua said that we have borrowed close to 11 trillion pesos. So how do you expect to pay for those loans that we have been securing for the health system? So we really have to open up, not all sectors, from entertainment to concerts to sports to restaurants. Everything should open up now. And of course, you have election in a way that somehow will stimulate the economy. Election spending normally in every election year that happens. Schools, hopefully we can open the schools to face-to-face come June. I think there's enough, there are a couple of months for us to prepare to get every uh, student fully vaccinated and the faculty so that schools can finally open up. And school activity helps also stimulate the economy, especially the small carinderias and the canteens and all of that. And of course, getting our own people back to work. No? As you know, everybody has been working from home. Working from home actually doesn't create economic activity. We want them to go out of their house and start to work and ride the public transportation or whatever and eat outside. So that helps stimulate the economy. So we have to push towards this direction. Now, Octo feels that there is a good window of 6 months. They don't see any variant coming in. I'm sure DOH, of course, is worried that there could be, and we don't know. But at least our visibility is quite clear that in the next couple of months, things should be fine.
Sir Joey, this is Danny jumping in. What's your clear position on the use of vaccination cards? Kasi anecdotally, no, there are a lot of fake ones, there are a lot of handwritten ones. There's been difficulty in accessing the system to print an official one, and then they try to pilot it in the no vax, no ride policy. You know, isn't the point of shifting to alert level 2, alert level 1 to be able to do away with these when you enter establishments? And won't the booster issue, you know, how do you call this? Make it even more difficult for the vaccination card issue to work effectively?
You know, I've been in the States in San Francisco for about 2 weeks. I've never been to restaurants in Manila. I've started to go out in restaurants here, and they're very strict. A couple of times I forgot to bring my vaccination cards, and definitely they will not allow you to enter. So somebody will have to email me my vaccination card and show it to the person. So they're extremely strict. Whether you watch a game, you go to restaurants, indoor dining, they're extremely strict. Outdoor, no problem. No, you don't need a vaccination card. And I think that protocol is correct because we want to make sure that those who are moving out are protected. What is very clear is those that have really filled up the hospitals are the unvaccinated. The vaccines do provide good protection. So I think that should continue. Now, how do we shift to the booster cards? We all know that everybody has taken their 2 shots already in NCR, and people are now taking their booster shots. So we have to continue. We cannot use the vaccination cards at a certain point because those vaccines would have waned from the last shot, maybe 4 or 5 months down the road. They will have to take those booster shots. In the Philippines, the DOH has made it 3 months after your second vaccine shot. No? In America, it's 5 months. No? So I think to maintain the wall of immunity, as Secretary Galvez puts it, we really have to continue to maintain that, whether the person gets it to natural immunity by getting sick or to the vaccines. No? But that's very important.
Okay, sir, relation to that, you're suggesting to just do away with the 5-level alert system, not necessarily do away, but at least trim it down to 3 levels muna. How would that affect this push you have for making it strict, for protecting the unvaccinated? And wouldn't this, let's say, possibly discourage people from getting vaccinated because open na eh, parang why do I need to get vaccinated?
Well, that's why in places like here in the Bay Area, they require vaccination cards when you enter high-risk areas like gyms, like coliseums, like indoor dining in restaurants. So they require those. No? And when you travel to America, you have to have a vaccine card, and that's very important. So why trim it down from 5 to 3? Well, we should try to make it easier for people to understand because the gap between 1, 2, 3, and 4 will be so, maliit lang yan eh. So we have to try to reduce it to 3. And Secretary Tabsex Nograles says that maybe alert level 1 will be the new normal, which I guess could be the new normal. And eventually, hopefully down the road, as the president lifts the national emergency on health, then when that is done, then the alert levels can be lifted. No, I feel that the alert levels can be used now as a transition, but eventually the new normal can maybe be alert level 1, but we don't really need to call it alert level 1. That's my own thinking. Everybody has their own idea. And we use it only when it's needed, similar to typhoons. When a typhoon comes to the country, we already either put it level 1, level 2, and level 3. Hardly we do have a typhoon level 4. No?
All right, Sir Joey, talking about transitions here, other parts of the world already making that shift. You have WHO Africa saying that they are transitioning out of the pandemic phase. You also have Sweden declaring an end to the pandemic. Do you see us heading in that direction? And given that as well, what should be in the exit strategy?
Well, I think the IETF and the team of Secretary Duque and Galvez are moving towards that. The private sector, we have sent our inputs ever since the start. No, we've been throwing them ideas. I think we're coming to that point of how to really manage and live, with COVID around, similar to a flu. People will get sick. Infections may rise, no? But provided that the hospital do not get stressed, then I think we should allow things to move on. I mean, and that's why vaccination, whether it's your 2 primary doses or the booster shots, have to really be followed through, no, in the implementation. And I think there is no slack here. Government is pushing hard. Private sector right now, we're inoculating all our employees. In our company, we've totally finished inoculating most of our employees with their booster shots. So that has to continue. And I understand that the concern that, let's give the vaccines first to those who have not taken the first and second dose. But we have close to 19 million vaccines in the country today, some of which are expiring. So we have to use this. In fact, some of these vaccines may have to be donated to some other countries. So if we take our time, then you will have more vaccines going to get expired. No? So we have to push hard. We have to have a sense of urgency. And it's very clear, no, that the vaccines do work from preventing people from getting severe illness. And that hinges on our economy. How do we open up the economy if our people will not be protected? No?
All right, again, vaccination still key. We are to at least make that transition to easing restrictions. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Joey Concepcion, Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And that's a first look into the business day this Friday, February 11, 2022. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Danny Laurel. Mask on, wash hands, stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.